technical stuff. I did keep playing trombone, by the way, so I still play trombone. My wife still plays flute. Anyway, but space has changed a lot in the last few years. So what I want to do is talk about a few things first. So, how often do you think a launch occurs in Florida right now? How often a year? Just shout out a number. How many times a year?
20.
20? Okay, what else?
Every 2 weeks.
What?
6.
6 times a year? Okay, what else? Anybody else got a number?
Every 2 weeks.
Every 2 weeks? Okay, so
Every day.
was that? I saw a hand back there. Anybody else? Nope. Okay, so in the shuttle days, there might be a launch about 8 times a year. The shuttle is supposed to launch on the order of once every 2 weeks because they had a fleet of shuttles, right? That never actually happened. The shuttle wound up being probably one of the most complicated things that we ever built. It's considered one of the most complicated things. But there were other things that got launched back then, but a launch, maybe 11 launches a year, orbital launches in Cape Canaveral was a good number. It wasn't a bad number, it was a good number. So the launches right now, they launch about every 3.5 days. If you travel to Florida right now, you don't really have to schedule a trip anymore. You just need to make sure it's long enough, and you will probably see a Falcon 9 go up. And so that's a big number. So there's actually orbital launches across the world last year were 259 launches across the world. That's how much is going on. The U.S.
putting together what I think is an amazing program. It's called REAP, Regional Entrepreneurship Acceleration Program. What they've done is they've created, with faculty, right, at MIT, they've gone out to the world and they've specifically looked at different and scoped and scouted different regions across the world who can specialize and basically take advantage of the region's own competitive advantage, right? And so through the research, and we know that institution is rather, we all know of its history. They partner for a 2-year program, right? And they partner with universities, with government officials, with venture capitalists, with founders, entrepreneurs, and with corporates to serve as a pipeline and to refine and to really identify what is this region's main powerhouse? What is this region really truly about, given its infrastructure, given its people, given its resources? And I believe that is a strong partnership, and I think that is something that as founders and beyond founders, we should push forward. We've already been identified as a region, and a lot of the regions particularly in this MIT program, all happen to be in Middle America. And to me, it's no surprise, right? There's already our tier 1 cities or tier 2 cities. We all know, what they're great at. We know what New York is great at. We know what the East Coast is great at. We know what Silicon Valley is great at. And, and obviously very thoughtful, right? And there's a lot of design thinking behind that. But specifically, there is an opportunity, for a renaissance of a new economic zone. And through, I think, may not be MIT, but I like the structure and the framework that they put behind it. Be a great way to keep us all accountable and to really bring organization and get us on the map. Because there's some really great people, there's some really great work being put behind it, and I think it presents itself as a really good opportunity. As someone who built their career as a technologist, in private equity and in finance, one of the things that we often see be amiss, and I'm just going to talk about general themes of what we see in decks and what we see in meetings.
That's great.
Right? So you build a cool deck, that's great. What happens after the deck, and what happens in those first initial conversations, right? That matter really truly, every single point of contact in this world really is one about relationships, and it's about transparency, and it's about communication, right? And so as an investor, there's one very important thing to consider, and it's often forgotten, is that both the investor and the founder, this becomes an at-will, right? It's an at-will business, right? We're not necessarily forced to go into business. This is a partnership that we're building for 5 to 10, for 15 years, for however long your business life cycle runs for, and at that, hopefully successful, right? But knowing that and providing that context, I cannot tell you the number of times where when we look at decks, thankfully there are AI opportunities now to be able to refine your presentation. But AI, as we all know, it's just a fraction of the formula.
Right.
The second part is the human, and probably the more important element is the human and how you storytell. And Steve Jobs basically said this, often, and really inculcated this into his own theory and into his own ways of operating. We all may have different opinions on it, but there was one truth, and that is that the most important person in the room will always be the storyteller, right? And how you narrate your story, how you're able to convince others and hit the points, and hit the points that matter most. Okay. And so, when you go into these meetings, I want to see you paint a picture. Do you have a minimal viable product? Do you have partnerships? Do you have some sort of traction? What does your advisory group look like? I want to see you tell me a story. And sometimes there is a lot of first-time founders, right, who are navigating. I completely understand that. As much as they're on the other side of the table, there is first-time emerging managers, right, who are also looking to invest. So really, it's a very interesting thing that happens, right? But the importance of having done your homework, doing your research, right, knowing what the investor is looking at. First of all, I will say 3 things. The thesis. So if you're reaching out to an investor and the investor focus, is only at the angel stage, or someone who is investing, a company who is operating in the Series A or in the later stages, that's maybe not the best fit, and vice versa, right? Secondly, if the investor's geographic focus is out of scope, that's another thing. And so sometimes we wonder, why do we get outreached if we don't necessarily fit with it? This company doesn't fit with our thesis. We're happy to talk to them, and we're happy to explore ways in which we can partner or connect them with some of our other advisors. But it becomes an important thing.
Workforce, in our old workforce. Problems that haven't been designed yet. So I'm not saying degrees go away. What I'm saying is we're shifting away from, I think in the country, going from having students show up in a classroom and memorize a lot of information. It's all book study, and then they take a test, and then they check the box,
right,
and they're done. I'll have to use UTEP as a good example here, where in the Aerospace Center, for example, we employ over 100 students a semester. I don't know what the exact number is this semester, but it's over 100. And we put undergrads in the labs doing research.
And then I think part of doing that is challenging ourselves to take the thinking of young people very seriously. And I'll just critique the institution that I work inside of, which is we don't do a good job of that. And the comment in the last panel about sort of the path to innovation being letting go of old ideas. Well, the fastest way to do that is sit down at a table full of young people. And so we have to get much more serious about the thinking, the experiences that our young people bring to the table. We have
Nice. Sure.
I think you can take the next one. So my name is Deanna White. I am currently the Vice President of Learning and Guest Experience at La Nube STEAM Discovery Center. And I also had the privilege of working in the public school system for about 18 years. My last position was 5 years at a beautiful elementary school in Socorro ISD. So thinking of that question, like both perspectives, being in the public schools and then in the private sector, and then trying to find the mix in between. I think a big one is working with educators in the public school system to think beyond the walls of the classroom. And I see informal settings like La Nube supporting and finding the niches that are still needed. So, for example, while our schools are getting really great at engaging kiddos in project-based learning and integrating STEAM and having STEAM academies in elementary schools, and having really amazing CTE programs in high schools, I think that informal learning institutions like La Nube can start looking at where there might be niches of need. So for example, if there are really advanced CTE programs at the high school level, where do STEAM discovery centers or museums or tech institutions like Tech Frontier and Fab Lab fit in to support introducing those types of skills and at least getting kiddos' feet wet in things like elementary school, middle school, and providing, I guess, being able to be a hub of innovation that might not be at the fingertips of some schools.
Academic requirements, state mandates, versus what we're discussing here, the importance of innovation, creative thinking, these new programs. How would you say for our region, would districts, how could they balance this and be effective and create? It's following up what you already said and maybe expanding more.
I think for all 9 of our regional districts, it's an investment in advanced academics. It's not lowering bars, it's making sure that they are as high as is reasonably possible. Introducing algebra at a much earlier age, or 1 year earlier in 8th grade, is one of those examples. Getting them hands-on experience with artificial intelligence, not just thinking about how to use AI, but what using AI means, what's behind it, what is the basic programming architecture that makes it possible. I don't think we can just rely on Copilot from here on out. We have to still remember to teach the basics in programming and get that right from a logical perspective, because it really is a door that opens many other domains of thought. We teach calculus, I don't think because we're going to be using it in the most practical sense, but because it is a way of thinking that is applicable throughout any problem you face in society. If it's architecture or robotics, such as the things that Fab Lab or Tech Frontiers touched on this year, these things are very, very practical for applying, meaning calculus is very practical for applying that thought. So I think we need to focus on that and focus on taking down some of the barriers that sometimes exclude the social sciences as well. A lot of these practical applications involve tensions within society, and discussing something like the Chamizal Agreement, where 2 countries came together to decide a hydrological problem. That's a lot of engineering involved in that. It gives us a practical opportunity to teach about something that happened to our community, but it also opens a window into the engineering behind it, into the hydrological sciences. What's it all about? What does it mean for farmland in the region when you have a big treaty like the 1962 agreement between Mexico and the United States? So that's what I mean when I say El Paso is a sandbox for thinking about some of these higher level concepts. It's a training ground, really, and our historical experience is a great place to start on that. Don't know if that answered the question or if it was a bit of a sidetrack. But
This is great. I can't wait for our next conversation about how we could integrate the calculus. But I focus on don't make too many comments. In Australia, I've done these experiments in STEAM education in the early age.
Thank you, Scott McLaughlin, for stepping in last minute in the place of Becky Brown. Thank you to the amazing panelists and moderators who helped weave together a holistic and regional narrative for the Southwest. I raise your